In the hushed pre-dawn of Doha, a city known for diplomacy and quiet corridors of power, the night exploded. A strike against leaders meeting under the cover of peace negotiations. A country that once brokered ceasefires now reels from a blow to its sovereignty. The message was unmistakable. A new chapter in a widening conflict had begun. What happens when a targeted strike lands not in a battlefield, but in the living room of a mediator? The answer is not only military. It is diplomatic, economic, and profoundly political. What happened in Doha? On September 9th to 10th, 2025, Israel launched a precision strike on Doha, Qatar, aimed at senior Hamas figures believed to be involved in negotiations. Qatari authorities reported casualties, including a member of their internal security forces and several militants. Doha condemned the attack as a violation of its sovereignty and international law. Israel justified the action as a counter-terror measure, an attempt to disrupt leadership that it says enabled attacks on Israeli territory. Hamas called it an assassination of the negotiation process. The diplomatic shockwave. Qatar's role as mediator had been long established. Back-channel talks, hostage negotiations, even hosting political offices for Palestinian groups. By hitting Doha, the strike did more than remove targets. It struck a pillar of the diplomatic architecture that had kept ceasefire talks alive. The Gulf's reaction was swift and severe. Regional leaders publicly condemned the strike. Emergency meetings were convened. For many in the Gulf, the incident raised a stark question. If a state can be struck on its soil while mediating peace, what protections remain for those who choose diplomacy over belligerence? Why Israel struck, motives and calculus? There are three overlapping logics to understand the strike. 1. Immediate security logic. Israel says removing leadership and command nodes reduces the risk of future attacks. 2. Strategic signaling. A show of reach. A demonstration that geography will not shelter those who, in Israel's view, enable violence. 3. Domestic politics. Leaders sometimes use decisive military action to satisfy domestic pressure, to appear uncompromising in the face of repeated attacks. But military efficacy and long-term security are not the same. Strikes that undermine mediation or kill a mediator's own security personnel can close channels for de-escalation just when they are needed most. Why Israel won't be spared? The unity factor. Many analysts now argue this strike could redraw the region's calculus. Why? Because it shifts incentives for Arab and Muslim states in three ways. Sovereignty threat. Gulf capitals suddenly perceive that even their soil can be struck. That shared vulnerability breeds collective response. Diplomatic solidarity. Nations that once cooperated quietly with Israel over shared interests now face public pressure at home to distance themselves or rally around Qatar. Strategic realignment. Loss of trust in outside guarantors, notably Washington, may accelerate Gulf moves to coordinate security and economic policies independent of traditional partners. In short, the strike risks turning isolated grievances into a unified diplomatic front. Emergency Arab-Islamic summits, heightened condemnation in international forums, and a recalibration of alliances. Unity doesn't mean uniform policy, but it does mean fewer safe havens, more coordinated pushback, and higher political cost for repeat strikes. The risks: escalation and the loss of mediation. Striking a mediator reduces trust in negotiation channels precisely when negotiations are most fragile. If ceasefire talks collapse, the humanitarian cost, already immense in Gaza and Yemen, multiplies. Economically, higher regional tension threatens shipping lanes and investment, pushing more states to hedge or coordinate militarily. What comes next? Several pathways lie ahead. Renewed diplomatic pressure that forces de-escalation, coordinated Gulf responses that isolate or sanction, or, worse, a feedback loop of retaliation and counter-retaliation that expands the war beyond Gaza and Doha. The next moves of capitals from Riyadh to Ankara and of Washington and Brussels will determine whether this is a turning point toward containment or the start of a wider conflict. A single strike on a single night can ripple across a region's politics, economies, and lives. When mediation becomes a battlefield, the hardest hit are always those who had the least to gain: civilians, displaced families, and the institutions that once promised a path out of violence. The Doha strike is not only a military act, it is a test of whether diplomacy, even under fire, can still hold the fraying threads of peace together.